Dr. Zixavara had been staring at the same ancient symbols for 3 months. Her eyes hurt. Her back hurt. Everything hurt. But she could not stop now. She was so close to understanding what the predecessors had written on these old star charts. The predecessors were the ancient race that came before everyone else in the galaxy. They had disappeared thousands of years ago. Nobody knew where they went or why they left, but they left behind ruins and artifacts on many worlds. These artifacts contained knowledge that the current galactic civilization could barely understand. Zixavara was a Mythilian. Her species was known for being patient and smart. She had spent her whole life studying ancient languages. She had 7 different doctorate degrees. The Galactic Council had hired her specifically for this project. They wanted to know what the predecessors had written about the old worlds, the worlds that existed before the Great Silence. The Great Silence was a period in galactic history when almost all advanced civilizations died out. It happened about 50,000 years ago. The predecessors had lived before that time. Their records were the only window into that lost age. Today something changed. Zixavara saw a pattern in the symbols that she had missed before. Her 3 hearts started beating faster. She input the pattern into her computer. The translation algorithm started working. Slowly, the ancient symbols transformed into modern galactic standard language. The star chart was a list of worlds. Each world had coordinates and a name. But these were not the current names that the Council used. These were the old names. The true names that the predecessors had given to these worlds. Zixavara scrolled through the list. Most entries were boring. Dead worlds with names like the Frozen Mistake or the Place Where Nothing Grows. Some were worlds she recognized. The Vrexian homeworld was listed as the Blue Paradise. The Mythilian homeworld was called the Garden of Gentle Thoughts. Then she saw an entry that made her stop breathing. Sol 3. Coordinates. Sector 242, Arm 7, Cluster 19. The name translated roughly into Galactic Standard. The computer offered several possible meanings because the predecessor language was complex. The closest translations were the Garden of Iron Phantoms, or Where the Unkillable Learn to Dream, or possibly the Crucible of Eternal Soldiers. Zixavara knew those coordinates. She had memorized every important world in the Council. She pulled up the current star charts. She compared the coordinates. Her manipulator appendages started shaking. Sol 3 was Earth, the human homeworld. For a long moment, Zixavara just sat there. She looked at the screen. She looked at the name. She looked at the coordinates. She checked them again, and again, and again. There was no mistake. The predecessors had known about Earth. They had visited it. They had given it a name, and that name was terrifying. Zixavara had met humans before. They were friendly. They smiled a lot. They were always willing to help. They were maybe a bit intense sometimes, but they were good people. Their ambassador, a woman named Chen, was one of the kindest beings Zixavara had ever met. But the Garden of Iron Phantoms? Where the unkillable learn to dream. What did that mean? Zixavara's training kicked in. This was too important for her to handle alone. She needed to report this to her supervisor immediately. She saved all her work. She encrypted the files with the highest level security codes. She sent a message marked urgent to Director Calseth. 20 minutes later, Director Calseth stood in her office. He was a tall Vrexian with blue scales and cold eyes. He read the translation 3 times. "You are certain about these coordinates?" he asked. "Yes, Director. I have checked them 17 times. And you are certain about the translation?" "The predecessor language is difficult, but yes. These are the most accurate translations possible. All variations carry the same basic meaning. This world was seen as a place of survivors, warriors, beings that could not be killed easily." Director Calseth's scales turned a darker shade of blue. This was a sign of deep concern in his species. "Do not speak of this to anyone," he said. "I am taking this directly to the High Council. This information is now classified at the highest level. If anyone asks what you are working on, tell them you are still trying to decode the basic symbols." "Yes, Director." After he left, Zixavara sat in her office for a long time. She thought about the humans she knew. She thought about Ambassador Chen, who always brought sweet treats to share during long meetings. She thought about the human scientists who were so excited to learn from other species. She thought about the human children she had seen on the observation deck, pressing their faces against the glass, looking at the stars with wonder in their eyes. Were these the same species the predecessors had feared? Or respected? The name could mean either, or both. Zixavara went back to the star chart. She looked at the other entries near Sol 3. There were notes, small symbols that she had not translated yet. She worked on them carefully. One symbol appeared next to the Earth entry multiple times. She isolated it. She ran it through her translation program. The symbol meant warning or caution or remember. Her 3 hearts started beating at different rhythms. This was a stress response her species had. It only happened when they were very frightened. Within an hour, Director Kalseth contacted her again. The High Council wanted to see all her files. They wanted her to appear before them. They wanted every piece of information about the predecessor names for worlds. Within 2 hours, an emergency session of the Galactic Council was called. This had only happened 4 times before in the Council's 12,000-year history. The last time was when the Krell Plague threatened to wipe out 15 species. Zixavara was brought to the Council chambers. It was a massive room that could hold thousands of beings. Today it was almost full. Representatives from 300 species sat in curved rows that rose up like a great amphitheater. At the center was the speaking platform where she now stood. High Counselor Vrathmar presided over the session. He was an old being from a species that lived for 500 years. He had served on the council for 2 centuries. His face was unreadable. "Dr. Zixavara," he said formally, "please present your findings to the council." She did. She showed the star chart. She showed the translations. She showed the coordinates. She showed how Sol 3 matched Earth perfectly. The council chamber was silent. 300 species and not one made a sound. Finally, someone spoke. "Where is Ambassador Chen?" The human ambassador was told there was a scheduling conflict, Vrathmar said. She was told her presence was not required for this session. Another long silence. Why would the predecessors give Earth such a name? Someone asked. "That," said Vrathmar, "is what we need to find out. I am ordering the deep archives to be unsealed. We will search for every record the predecessors left about Sol 3. About Earth, about humans. This council will not rest until we understand what we are dealing with." Zixavara stood on the platform and felt the weight of 300 species staring at her discovery. She had spent her life seeking knowledge. Now she wished she had never found this particular piece of truth. Because somewhere in this station, Ambassador Chen was probably having tea and reading reports and smiling at people in hallways. And she had no idea that the entire Galactic Council was terrified of her species. The deep archives were located in the lowest level of the council station. Most council members had never been there. Some did not even know the archives existed. They were sealed behind doors that required authorization from the High Counselor himself. The last time they were opened was 3,000 years ago. High Counselor Vrathmar stood before the massive doors with a team of specialists. They had equipment for handling ancient data storage. They had protective gear in case the old systems released radiation or toxic gases. They had weapons, though nobody wanted to say why weapons might be necessary in an archive. Vrathmar placed his hand on the scanner. The machine was so old that it took several minutes to verify his identity. Then the doors opened with a sound like a dying animal. Air rushed out that had been sealed inside for millennia. It smelled like metal and dust and something else. Something that made every being step back instinctively. It smelled like fear. Inside, the archives stretched away into darkness. Emergency lights flickered on slowly. They revealed rows and rows of data storage units. Some were crystal matrices, some were quantum drives. Some were made from materials that current science could not identify. All of them were older than the current galactic civilization. "Find everything about Sol 3, Vrathmar ordered. "Find everything about humans. Find everything about species designation Terrahuman Prime. Use every search term you can think of. I want to know what the predecessors knew." The specialists went to work. They activated the ancient machines carefully. Some of the storage units crumbled to dust at the first touch. Others hummed to life as if they had been sleeping, not dead. Data started flowing into modern computer systems. Translation programs started running. The first files were basic. Star charts, mineral surveys, notes about Sol 3's position in the galaxy. It was a typical yellow star with several planets. The third planet had oxygen and water and life. Nothing unusual so far. Then they found the biological surveys. The predecessors had studied life on Earth in detail. They had records going back millions of years. They had watched as different species evolved and died and evolved again. They had watched the planet go through ice ages and warm periods. They had watched asteroids strike the surface and kill most life forms. And they had watched one species survive everything. The human evolutionary line had been through 5 major extinction events. Each time most life on Earth died. Each time the ancestors of humans survived. Sometimes just barely. Sometimes only a few thousand individuals remained alive. But they always survived. The predecessors had a term for this. They called it the Crucible Effect. A world that tried to kill all life on it repeatedly. A world that forced species to adapt or die. A world that created survivors. Earth was rated as a Class 12 death world on the predecessor scale. One of the specialists checked the modern classification system. Counselor, our current scale only goes to Class 10. We have never encountered a world rated higher than Class 8. Vrathmar felt something cold settle in his chest. Continue. The next files were about human physical capabilities. The predecessors had been thorough. They had studied human biology in detail that seemed almost invasive. Humans had evolved from persistence hunters. They could run for days. They could track prey across vast distances. They could chase animals until the animals literally died of exhaustion. Their bodies had specialized features for this. They could sweat to cool down while running. They could carry water and food. They could operate in extreme temperatures that would kill most species. Their bones were dense and strong. They healed from injuries that would be fatal to other species. They could survive losing large amounts of blood. They could function with damaged organs. They had redundant systems in their bodies that allowed them to keep going even when badly hurt. Their hands could grip with tremendous force. Their arms could throw objects with deadly accuracy. They had evolved special shoulder joints just for throwing. No other species in the known galaxy had this adaptation. They could eat almost anything organic. Their digestive systems could handle toxins that would kill most beings. They could adapt to new foods within a few generations. They could survive on minimal nutrition for extended periods. Their immune systems were aggressive. They could fight off diseases that would devastate other populations. They could develop immunity to poisons. They could survive infections that should be fatal. But it was the psychological files that made everyone in the archive stop working. Humans had something the predecessors called persistence of will. They did not give up. Even when they should. Even when giving up was the logical choice. They would keep fighting. Keep trying. Keep struggling until they either succeeded or died. They formed social bonds that overrode survival instinct. They would die for their families. They would die for their friends. They would die for strangers if they believed it was right. This made them unpredictable in combat. This made them dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with weapons or technology. They had imagination. They could picture things that did not exist. They could plan for scenarios that had never happened. They could create solutions to problems they had never encountered. This made them incredibly adaptive, and they had something the predecessors had trouble translating. The closest word was spite. Humans could act against their own interests just to prove a point. They could endure suffering just to deny victory to an enemy. They could sacrifice everything just to make sure the other side did not win. One file showed predecessor observations of human warfare. Humans fought each other constantly. They had developed weapons of terrible sophistication. They had created bombs that could destroy entire cities. They had created diseases that could kill millions. They had created poisons that could wipe out populations. But they had also created rules for warfare. They had concepts like war crimes and civilian casualties and proportional response. They would fight brutal wars and then help rebuild their enemies afterward. They would bomb cities and then send food and medicine to survivors. The predecessors had observed humans doing something that seemed impossible. They would fight to complete exhaustion, suffer terrible losses, and then immediately offer peace and friendship to their former enemies. This had happened multiple times in human history. There were files about human culture, their art and music and stories. Humans created entertainment about suffering. They wrote stories about tragedy and loss and horror. They created music about pain and death and sorrow, and then they consumed this entertainment voluntarily. They chose to feel these emotions. They had a concept called sport. They would compete against each other in activities that mimicked warfare or hunting. They would run until their bodies broke down. They would lift heavy objects until their muscles tore. They would fight each other with their bare hands following agreed-upon rules. And they did this for fun. One of the specialists found a file marked with multiple warning symbols. She opened it carefully. It was the predecessor's final assessment of humanity. Species designation Terra Human Prime represents the most successful result of Crucible-class evolution we have observed. They have survived every extinction scenario their world produced. They have adapted to every environmental challenge. They have overcome every biological limitation through technology and social cooperation. They call themselves humanity from their root word meaning compassion and mercy. This is not contradiction. This is warning. They are capable of infinite kindness because they are capable of infinite cruelty. They understand suffering because they have experienced every form of it. They offer mercy because they know the value of receiving it. They are persistence hunters on a cosmic scale. Once they identify a goal, they will pursue it without stopping. Time means nothing to them. Setbacks mean nothing to them. They will continue until they succeed or until they die. If they ever leave their world, they will either be the galaxy's greatest hope or its worst nightmare. The determining factor will be how they are treated by other species. Treat them with respect and they will be loyal unto death. Treat them with cruelty and they will show you what true cruelty means. Recommendation: avoid contact. If contact is unavoidable, establish friendship immediately. Never give them reason to consider you an existential threat. Species that become existential threats to humanity do not survive. The archives were silent except for the humming of ancient machines. Rathmar read the file 3 times. Then he looked at his team. Seal these archives, he said quietly. Classify everything at the highest level. Then prepare a full briefing for the council. Tell them to clear their schedules. This is going to take a while. Junior analyst Kratoth had been with the Council Intelligence Division for only 3 years. She was young by her species standards. She was eager to prove herself. When she received the assignment to review human activities since joining the Council, she thought it would be boring paperwork. She was very wrong. The assignment came directly from High Counselor Vrathmar. It had the highest classification level. She was moved to a secure office with no windows. She was given access to files she did not know existed. She was told to review everything humans had done for the past 23 years. Every diplomatic exchange, every trade agreement, every military action, every cultural event, everything. She started with the easy data: public records, news reports, official statements. Humans had joined the Council 23 years ago. They had arrived in slower-than-light ships with primitive fusion drives. Their first words to the galaxy were, "Hello, friends. We come in peace. We hope to learn from you." The Council had welcomed them. Humans were given junior membership status. This was normal for new species. They would need time to adapt to galactic society. They would need to learn the rules and customs. They would need to prove they could be trusted. Humans had been model citizens. They had followed every rule. They had respected every custom. They had been polite and friendly to every species they encountered. They had shared their technology freely. They had asked for very little in return except knowledge and friendship. Kratoth expanded her search to military records. This was where things got interesting. Humans had participated in 3 conflicts since joining the Council. All 3 were defensive actions against pirate groups or rogue factions. In each case, humans had sent ships to help protect Council space. In each case, humans had fought bravely. In each case, humans had won. But something was strange about how they fought. Kratoth pulled up the combat footage. Human ships used kinetic weapons mostly, railguns that fired metal slugs at high velocity, missiles with conventional explosives, laser systems for point defense. This was all standard technology. Nothing unusual, except humans were very, very good at using these weapons. Human ships moved differently than Council ships. They accelerated harder. They turned sharper. They took maneuvers that should have killed their crews from the G-forces. But humans could survive high acceleration that would turn other species into paste. They wore special suits. They used special chairs. They injected chemicals into their bodies that let them stay conscious under forces that should render them unconscious. Human pilots were frighteningly accurate. Their reaction times were faster than most species. Their situational awareness was better. They seemed to predict what enemy ships would do before the enemies did it. In every engagement, human ships had kill ratios of 5 to 1 or better. But they held back. Kratoth could see it in the combat data. Humans never pursued fleeing enemies very far. Humans always offered surrender terms. Humans always provided medical aid to defeated opponents. Humans followed the Council's rules of warfare perfectly. Kratoth requested access to classified human military databases. She expected to be denied. Instead, her request was approved within minutes. This was suspicious. Why would humans give the Council access to classified files? Then she understood. They wanted the Council to see these files. This was a message. The files showed human military capabilities from before they joined the Council. Weapons they had built during their own internal conflicts. Weapons they used when they fought each other. Nuclear bombs. Devices that released the power of splitting atoms. Humans had thousands of these. They had used 2 of them in a war once. The bombs had destroyed entire cities instantly. Humans had then built bigger bombs. Bombs that could wipe out whole regions. Bombs that could make areas uninhabitable for generations. Biological weapons. Diseases engineered to kill. Viruses that spread rapidly. Bacteria that produced deadly toxins. Humans had developed these and then banned them because they were too horrible to use. Chemical weapons. Gases that dissolved lungs. Liquids that burned through protective equipment. Nerve agents that killed in seconds. Humans had used these in wars. Then they had been so disturbed by the results that they agreed to never use them again, and there were theoretical weapons. Designs that had never been built, but could be, antimatter bombs, relativistic kinetic weapons, planet cracker devices, Grey goo nanotechnology, artificial plagues that could wipe out entire species. Humans knew how to build all of these. They had chosen not to bring them to space. Kratoth felt her breathing speed up. This was the message. Humans were showing the Council what they could do, and then showing that they chose not to do it. She moved on to cultural files. She needed to understand how humans thought. She needed to understand their motivations. Humans had extensive fiction libraries. They called it science fiction when it was about space and the future. Kratoth started reading these stories. She spent days going through them. The stories showed how humans imagined first contact. In most stories, humans were the weaker species. They met aliens with better technology. They met aliens who were stronger or smarter or more advanced. And humans had to survive through cleverness and determination and never giving up. These stories were inspirational. They showed humanity as scrappy underdogs who succeeded against impossible odds. They showed humans as the ones who had to be clever because they were not strong enough to win through force. Then Kratoth found the other stories. Human horror stories, human thrillers, human military fiction. These stories showed what humans feared, and what humans feared was themselves. Stories about wars that destroyed civilizations. Stories about plagues that killed billions. Stories about artificial intelligence that turned against its creators. Stories about aliens that tried to wipe out humanity. And in every case, humans survived. They always found a way to survive. The military fiction was especially disturbing. It showed human soldiers in detailed combat situations. It showed tactics and strategies. It showed how to win when outnumbered, how to win when outgunned, how to turn disadvantages into advantages, how to never surrender. These were not just stories. These were instruction manuals disguised as entertainment. Kratoth found historical records. Real events from Earth's history. Humans had fought thousands of wars. They had fought over territory and resources and ideas and religions. They had fought with sticks and stones and swords and guns and bombs. They had fought each other for their entire existence as a species, and they had gotten very, very good at it. But they had also gotten good at peace. Humans had created organizations to prevent war. They had created laws to protect civilians. They had created systems of diplomacy and trade. They had learned to cooperate on their own world before coming to space. Kratoth studied the formation of human world government. It had taken them centuries. They had failed many times. They had fought 2 global wars that killed hundreds of millions. But eventually they had succeeded. They had unified their species under one government. Then they had reached for the stars. She compiled all her data. She created charts and graphs. She ran simulations. She consulted with military strategists and psychologists and cultural experts. Everyone reached the same conclusion. Humans were dangerous. Not because they wanted to be, but because their entire evolution had made them into survivors, into fighters, into beings that did not quit no matter what. Kratoth wrote her final report. Her hands shook as she typed. Analysis of human behavior since joining the Galactic Council reveals a species operating under fundamental misunderstanding of their own nature. Humans appear to believe they are an average species with normal capabilities. They have modeled their behavior on other Council races, assuming this represents proper conduct for spacefaring civilizations. Evidence suggests humans are significantly more capable than they realize. Physical capabilities exceed Council norms by factors of 3 to 10 depending on category. Mental resilience and determination exceed measurable scales. Combat effectiveness is substantially higher than any species of equivalent technology level. Critical finding: humans have been gentle with the galaxy. They possess weapons and tactics they have chosen not to employ. They follow Council rules of warfare precisely despite having fought much more brutal wars among themselves. They have adapted to galactic society by suppressing their natural tendencies toward aggression and competition. Assessment: current human behavior represents conscious choice rather than inherent limitation. They are capable of much greater violence than they have demonstrated. They have chosen cooperation and peace because they believe this is how civilized species behave. Recommendation: under no circumstances should humans discover they are exceptional. Current human behavior depends on their belief that they are normal. If humans realize they are substantially more capable than other Council species, behavioral changes become unpredictable. Possibility exists that humans would maintain current peaceful behavior. However, possibility also exists that humans would begin acting according to their true capabilities rather than perceived norms. The galaxy is not prepared for humans who understand what they truly are. Maintaining current situation requires humans continue believing they are unremarkable. All Council interactions with humans should reinforce this belief. The Council chamber had never been this full. Every species had sent their representatives. Every seat was occupied. The air recycling system struggled to handle the different atmospheric requirements of 300 species, all breathing in one room. High Counselor Vrathmar stood at the central podium. He looked older than he had just days ago. The weight of what he knew pressed down on him like a physical thing. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," he began. "What I am about to tell you is classified at the highest level. Nothing we discuss here can leave this chamber. We are not recording this session. There will be no official minutes. When we leave this room, this meeting never happened." The chamber was silent. This was unprecedented. The xenolinguistics team has decoded predecessor star charts. We now know the ancient names for many worlds. One of these worlds is Earth. Vrathmar activated the holographic display. The predecessor symbols floated in the air above the podium. Beneath them the translation appeared, the Garden of Iron Phantoms, where the unkillable learn to dream, the Crucible. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Several representatives looked confused. A few looked horrified because they understood immediately what this meant. "We unsealed the deep archives," Vrathmar continued. "The predecessors left detailed records about Earth and humanity. I will summarize what we found." He presented the findings, the biological data, the combat assessments, the cultural analysis, the final warnings from the predecessors. With each revelation, the mood in the chamber grew darker. When he finished, nobody spoke for a long time. Finally, Council member Thexali stood up. She was a military strategist from a warrior species. Her people had fought in every major conflict for the past 1,000 years. She was not easily frightened. "High Counselor, I would like to present tactical analysis of a hypothetical human military campaign." "Proceed." Thexali activated her own display. Combat simulations filled the air. Numbers and projections scrolled past. "I have run every simulation I can think of. Multiple scenarios, different starting conditions, various levels of resistance. The results are consistent." She highlighted key statistics. Scenario 1. Humanity decides to expand through military conquest. Assume they use only technology they currently possess. Assume they fight using Council rules of warfare. Result: 67% probability they could conquer the known galaxy within 100 standard years. This assumes the Council unifies against them and fights back with everything we have. Shocked silence. Scenario 2. Same as Scenario 1, but assume 200 years instead of 100. Probability increases to 89%. Scenario 3. Humanity abandons Council warfare rules. They use weapons they developed on Earth, nuclear devices, biological agents, chemical weapons. They use tactics from their own military history. Result: 93% probability of conquest within 50 years. Scenario 4. Humanity develops advanced weapons based on their current theoretical knowledge. Antimatter devices. Relativistic kinetic weapons. Result: 98% probability of conquest within 20 years. Thexali closed her display. These numbers assume humanity fights us. They do not account for the possibility that some species would join them. Many would. Humanity is well liked. They have made many friends. Some species would probably side with humans against the Council. This would reduce our defensive capabilities significantly. A representative from the Kelvin Confederation stood up. He was shaking. Then we must strike first. We must eliminate the threat before they realize what they are capable of. Several other representatives voiced agreement. The chamber filled with nervous chatter. Frathmar raised his hand for silence. That option was considered. Military analysis was performed on preemptive strike scenarios. Council member Thexali, please share those results. Thexali looked unhappy. She activated her display again. Scenario: Council launches surprise attack on human space. We commit all available military forces. We strike their homeworld and all their colonies simultaneously. We use weapons of mass destruction. We aim for complete elimination of the species. She paused. Initial results are favorable. We destroy most human military assets in the first wave. We cause catastrophic casualties on Earth and their colonies. We severely damage their industrial capacity. Another pause. Then humanity responds. This is where every simulation breaks down. Human response patterns are unpredictable, but based on their history, we can make educated guesses. Humans do not surrender when facing extinction. They never have. Not once in their entire evolutionary history. Instead, they fight harder. They abandon all restraint. They stop following rules. They do whatever it takes to survive. Humans have extensive experience with total war. They have fought wars of annihilation against each other. They know how to continue fighting even after losing most of their population. They know how to rebuild in secret. They know how to develop new weapons under extreme pressure. In every simulation, initial Council success is followed by prolonged conflict. Humans who survive the first strike scatter throughout the galaxy. They hide, they rebuild. They develop new weapons and tactics, and they never stop coming for us. Simulation projections show conflict lasting anywhere from 50 to 300 years. Final outcome in 78% of simulations: Council defeat. In remaining simulations, mutual destruction of both Council and humanity, rendering most of the galaxy uninhabitable. The chamber was absolutely silent now. Thexali continued. The fundamental problem is this. If we make humanity our enemy, they become the existential threat they were evolved to overcome, and the predecessor data is clear. When humans face existential threats, they do not lose. They adapt. They learn. They outlast. They win. She sat down. Ambassador Kelthas from the Vrexian Empire stood slowly. So we do nothing? We just hope they never figure out what they are? We live in fear? Frathmar shook his head. No. We do something much more difficult than fighting. We become truly worthy of their friendship. He walked to the center of the chamber. Humans are operating under the assumption that they are normal. They believe galactic society is supposed to be peaceful and cooperative. They believe diplomatic solutions are the proper way to resolve conflicts. They believe other species should be treated with respect and kindness. And where did they get these ideas? From us. From observing how we interact with each other. From assuming we represent normal behavior for advanced civilizations. So we make it true. We become the civilization they think we are. We make sure the galaxy actually is a place where cooperation works, where diplomacy succeeds, where kindness is returned. Another representative spoke up. But what if they discover the truth anyway? What if they find out they are exceptional? Frathmar was quiet for a moment. Then we pray their mercy is as infinite as the predecessors suggested. He pulled up one final document from the predecessor files. The predecessors left one more note. It was marked as most important. It says this: humans can be the galaxy's greatest protectors or its worst nightmare. The determining factor is how they are treated. They have capacity for both infinite compassion and infinite cruelty. They will mirror what they receive. If we treat them with suspicion and fear, they will become what we fear. If we treat them with respect and friendship, they will be the best allies anyone could ask for. So here is what we will do. We will fast-track human proposals. We will address human concerns immediately. We will celebrate human culture. We will make sure humanity has every reason to love being part of this council. We will prove to them that the peaceful, cooperative galaxy they believe in actually exists. We will become the friends they think we are. Council member Fel Aran from the Science Coalition spoke up. This is manipulation. We are deceiving them. Yes, Vrathmar agreed, we are. For the sake of every species in this galaxy, we will maintain this deception. We will make humans believe they are ordinary, while treating them as the most important species we have ever encountered. Because the alternative is war, and we cannot win that war. The best we could hope for is mutual destruction. He looked around the chamber. All in favor of this approach? Every hand, claw, tentacle, and appendage rose. The vote was unanimous, then it is decided. From this moment forward, humanity is our highest priority. We will do everything in our power to keep them happy, peaceful, and believing they are unremarkable. This session is adjourned. Remember, this meeting never happened. The representatives filed out slowly. Many were lost in thought. Some were still frightened. All of them understood that the galaxy had just changed forever. In a small apartment on the residential level of the station, Ambassador Chen was making tea. She was looking forward to tomorrow's session. There were proposals to discuss, trade agreements to negotiate, cultural exchanges to plan. She smiled as she thought about how wonderful it was to be part of such a peaceful, cooperative galactic community. Everyone was so friendly and helpful. She had no idea that 300 species had just agreed to do everything in their power to make sure she kept thinking that, and no idea that this was the kindest decision those 300 species would ever make. Ambassador Chen walked into the council chambers the next morning with her usual smile. She carried a data pad with her proposals and a travel mug of coffee. She waved at several representatives she knew. They all waved back enthusiastically. High Counselor Vrathmar greeted her at the entrance to the main chamber. Ambassador Chen, welcome back. I hope you did not mind missing yesterday's session. Oh, not at all, Chen said cheerfully. These things happen. Was it anything important? Vrathmar's face remained perfectly neutral. Inside, his mind screamed. If only she knew. Just routine administrative matters, he said smoothly. Budget allocations. Scheduling conflicts. Very boring. Well, I have something much more interesting to discuss today, Chen said. She pulled up her datapad. Earth wants to propose a joint medical research initiative. We have been working on regenerative medicine techniques. We think they could really help species with less robust healing factors. Less robust. Vrathmar felt his throat tighten. Humans thought their incredible healing abilities were normal. They thought other species just needed a little help to reach the same level. That would be wonderful, Ambassador. I am sure the Medical Council would be very interested in your proposals. Shall we fast-track this through the approval process? Chen looked surprised and pleased. Really? That would be amazing. Usually these things take months to get approved. The Council recognizes the value of human contributions to galactic society, Vrathmar said. This was true now in ways Chen could never imagine. We want to make sure your ideas get the attention they deserve. Chen beamed. Thank you so much. I will prepare a full presentation for next week. She walked into the chamber. Other representatives greeted her warmly. Some came over to talk. Everyone wanted to hear about Earth's latest projects. Everyone was suddenly very interested in human proposals. Chen thought this was just normal diplomatic courtesy. She had no idea that every person in that room had been instructed to make her feel welcome and valued. She had no idea that human comfort was now the Council's highest priority. Over the following weeks, changes started happening throughout the Council. Human proposals were approved quickly. Projects that normally took months to review were cleared in days. Trade agreements that favored Earth were passed without opposition. Cultural exchange programs were expanded. Human scientists were invited to join prestigious research teams. Human artists were featured in galactic exhibitions. Human music was played on stations throughout Council space. To Chen and the other human representatives, this seemed like the natural progression of good relationships. They had been working hard for 23 years. Of course, people were starting to appreciate Earth's contributions. Of course, friendships were deepening. This was how galactic society was supposed to work. They had no idea that this was orchestrated, that every species had received instructions to prioritize human concerns, that the Council had essentially created a secret protocol called Keep the Humans Happy. Ambassador Kira, Chen's deputy, noticed some of the changes. Have you noticed how fast our proposals are getting approved lately? She asked one day. Chen nodded. I have. I think we are finally getting the hang of council procedures. We understand the system better now. We know how to present our ideas in ways that align with galactic priorities. Kira smiled. Yeah, that must be it. Neither of them suspected the truth. They were good at diplomacy. Their proposals were solid. But the real reason for their success was that 300 species were terrified of them. In a secure meeting room, High Counselor Vrathmar met with his inner circle. They reviewed the implementation of their plan. Human satisfaction ratings are up 15%, reported one advisor. They report feeling more integrated into galactic society. They feel their contributions are valued. Excellent, Vrathmar said. What about monitoring their technology development? We are tracking it carefully. Humans continue to develop along expected lines. Nothing unusual. They are focusing on civilian applications, medical technology, environmental systems, agricultural improvements. Their military development has actually slowed down. They seem less concerned about defense now that they feel secure in the council. This was exactly what Vrathmar wanted to hear. Humans who felt safe and valued would not build weapons. They would focus on peaceful pursuits. This was how you kept a warrior species gentle. You removed their reasons to be warriors. Any signs they suspect our true intentions? He asked. None. They believe all positive changes are a result of normal diplomatic progress. They think they have earned this treatment through their hard work. They have no idea we are treating them differently from other species. Good. Make sure it stays that way. Another advisor spoke up. There is one concern. Some of our own people are starting to wonder why we are giving humans preferential treatment. There are questions. Complaints about favoritism. Vrathmar considered this. Spread a cover story. Say that Earth has valuable resources we want access to. Say their medical technology is worth the investment. Give people a logical reason for our actions, just not the real reason. Understood. Life continued on the council station. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Chen established a weekly tradition. She would bring baked goods from Earth to share during long committee meetings. Cookies, brownies, pastries. Other representatives loved them. They looked forward to these treats. What they did not mention was that they had analyzed the food. They wanted to make sure there was nothing dangerous in it, not because they thought Chen would poison them, but because human food was designed for human biology. Food from a Class 12 death world might contain compounds toxic to other species. The analysis came back. Human foods were safe, delicious even, but the nutritional content was alarming. Human foods contained high levels of compounds that would be considered stimulants or even mild toxins for other species. Caffeine, capsaicin, alcohol. Humans consumed these regularly for pleasure. This was another reminder. Humans lived with danger every day and did not even notice it. Chen also started a cultural exchange program. She invited young aliens to visit Earth as students. They would attend human schools, learn human languages, experience human culture firsthand. The first group of alien students reported back. They were enthusiastic about their experience. Earth was beautiful. Humans were friendly. The education system was excellent. But they also reported things that concerned the council. Human children played games that simulated warfare. Human teenagers engaged in physical competitions that would be considered dangerous on other worlds. Human adults routinely did things like skydiving, rock climbing, and deep-sea diving for entertainment. One student reported watching human sporting events. She described something called boxing, where two humans would punch each other repeatedly until one fell unconscious. The crowd cheered. Everyone seemed to think this was normal entertainment. Another student reported that human children's stories often involved danger and violence. Characters overcoming obstacles through determination and courage. Heroes who never gave up even when facing impossible odds. These stories were meant to inspire children. The council read these reports with growing unease. Human culture was teaching their young to be tough, to persist, to overcome. This was not deliberate military training. This was just normal childhood. Humans raised their children to be survivors without even thinking about it, but the exchange program continued. Because stopping it would raise questions, and questions were dangerous. Chen never saw any of these reports. She only saw happy students returning from Earth with stories of wonderful experiences. She saw friendships forming between humans and aliens. She saw exactly what the council wanted her to see. One day Chen attended a reception for new council members. A species called the Zinthars had just joined. They were a warrior culture. They valued strength and combat prowess. Their representative, a scarred veteran named Kral, approached Chen. "Ambassador Chen, I have heard much about humans. Your species has impressive military record. 3 victories in defensive conflicts with 0 defeats. I would like to discuss tactical cooperation between our species." Chen smiled politely. "We are honored by your interest, but I should clarify. Earth's military philosophy focuses on defensive capability. We believe in maintaining sufficient strength to protect ourselves while prioritizing diplomatic solutions." Kral looked confused. "But you are warriors. Your combat efficiency is legendary. Why would you not embrace this?" "We are not warriors," Chen said gently. "We are just people trying to get along in the galaxy. Fighting should always be the last resort." Several nearby representatives went very still. They listened carefully. Kral pressed further. "But your ships move with aggression. Your tactics show killer instinct. Your pilots are predators," and laughed. "I think you are giving us too much credit. We just train hard and do our best. Anyone could achieve similar results with enough practice." She excused herself and moved on to greet other guests. She had no idea she had just demonstrated exactly what the council feared. Humans who genuinely believed they were ordinary. Humans who thought their incredible capabilities were normal. Humans who had no idea what they truly were. Kral turned to High Counselor Vrathmar, who had been listening. "She really believes that," Kral said quietly. "She thinks humans are average."